Another reason why I left religion, Christianity, fundamentalism, and religion is that the church ignores women's effects from abortion bans. So just to give another disclaimer at the start of every video, because I get a lot of angry and hateful comments in the comment section about how it's not all churches and it's not all men and it's not all Christianity. That's true. There are a lot of progressive denominations of Christianity. Lutheranism is definitely one of the liberal denominations. Any denomination usually that isn't under a hierarchy of a bigger denomination would usually lean in the liberal direction, not all the time, but if a church is non-denominational, I've found personally that they are usually liberal, or what Christians call progressive. And I never heard much about abortion being in the Southern Baptist Church. I recently, last summer, did an extensive research and took a few classes to understand the history of abortion and how the Southern Baptist, or the extreme versions of fundamentalist Christianity, what their history, how they reacted before the abortion bill known as Roe versus Wade went through the Supreme Court, and whether or not their stance on abortion changed post Roe versus Wade. I've met a lot of women who've chosen not to get an abortion. I've met women in classes that chose to get one abortion or up to 7 abortions. I've met women who went in for one and chose not to get one due to personal, religious, or, so many different factors. I can't list them all. And not everyone, especially women, react the same way to abortion any more than a group of people react the same thing to any other situation. And if you're against abortion, it's America. You can have whatever view you want, whether you're pro-abortion or anti-pro-life. That is a decision and a stance you're free to have. That's the nice thing about being in America and it being 2025 is that we can all make choices. As long as you're 18 or older, you can vote and choose what stance you want, or what stance you're going to promote, believe, and support. However, I think it's unwise for people to have an opinion without knowing historical facts, cultural and economic components, age, and personal experience. So let me explain. Everyone's free to have whatever opinion about something, or to have no opinion about something, especially if you don't know what it is, or you haven't taken the time yet to form an opinion through education or being informed. If you want to have an opinion or not, that's a personal opinion. However, if you have an opinion for or against abortion, it needs to be backed up with factual evidence, with empathy. There are a lot of people in this country that are pro-life. That's fine. I grew up in a very pro-life environment in the Southern Baptist Church. I think it's a big mistake for people to have an opinion without understanding historical, economical, racial, gendered, all the different components that fit together that either makes or prevents somebody from having an abortion. I grew up in an environment, very extreme forms of fundamentalist Christianity. Not one time did anyone ever bring up the side effects of abortion. And not all women have side effects from abortion besides the recovery period, obviously. Some women have expressed sadness. Some mourn, the loss of possibilities. For some women, and I'm not sure what the percentage is, and, I don't think it would be accurate if there was one, because there's a lot of women who don't talk about it. Same as with any form of very intimate choices. Not every woman reports their choices. I think it's unwise to choose to have an abortion without understanding the effects that are possible. I mean, you have to recover physically from the procedure, just like you would any other surgery or urgent care, whether it's invasive or it's not. You do have to recover. I have heard that it can be painful during and after an abortion, but it's, everyone's different. Some women do feel very emotional. Some grieve the loss of what they could have had, or maybe something they didn't want. Not all women who choose to get an abortion is it consensual. Some women are manipulated, coerced, and downright forced and made to have abortions, usually by family members, partners, or somebody that has influence over their life. And it's not acceptable for someone to force someone to do something against their will. That's not consensual. And I know that in several countries, it's illegal to coerce your partner into doing anything they don't want to do. If someone asked me, am I for or against abortion? I think every woman from the age of 10 to 100 deserve the right to choose. Everyone can make their own choices based on their conscience, their religion, their lack of religion, their social, economic options, location, career. Every woman, regardless of age, has the right to choose. If a woman has a right to choose which hospital to go to, what the baby's name's going to be, and if they want to be a mother, everyone should have the right to decide if they want to have a baby. Being pregnant and having a baby alters your body forever. And everyone experiences the changes in similar or very vastly different ways. But once you have a baby, your body never goes back to what it was before. And that can be a positive or a negative or a combination. But it is a life-altering event. Not all women who get pregnant were consensual individuals. Some people got pregnant due to crime, coercion, incest, or ignorance. Especially if you're in a lot of red states that teach abstinence only and do very little to nothing to educate people of any age about condoms and consent and just going into a gynecologist to learn about your body and to protect yourself against pregnancy or disease. I think every woman deserves the right to choose what they want to do with their own bodies and their life. I mean, America was founded on the idea of pursuit of happiness, as long as you're not encroaching on any person's freedoms and you're not a danger to yourself, any choice you make should be respected. The problem in this country is there a group of people, different groups of people, that have one agenda. They believe that a fetus's life is more important than the mother's. And if you believe that, you can make whatever decisions you want about your own body. Ironically, if those people do take over, become judges, president, and senators, they'll lose that right. And most women in America have lost that right. But every woman deserves the right to choose. If you can choose what person you want to marry or live with, the career you want, the clothes, the fashion you want to wear, and what city you want to live in. Every woman has a right to decide their own health. Men have complete autonomy over their reproduction. Women do not. Very few places do women have equal reproductive rights and privileges. I would say the countries that are more atheistic or humanist probably have more female autonomy and progression than any other state or any other country. The more you align with Judeo-Christian values, as Muslim values, or any religion, political party that is extremely conservative or fundamentalist Christian or conservative, you will see a steep decline or complete erasing of female sovereignty, agency, and autonomy. If you haven't read or watched The Handmaid's Tale, I would recommend it. Because protecting the unborn is never about the child. It's always about controlling women. If conservatives really cared about children, we wouldn't have elected a president who prefers 14-year-olds instead of 24-year-olds. And the MAGA are now known to be protecting men, usually white, cis, straight men, who are predators. So the groups that are supported, funded, and driven forward are by conservative groups, whether it's politically, religiously, culturally. Pro-life is usually funded and supported by organizations that protect predators. And if you're pro-life, that's perfectly fine. As long as your right to choose doesn't apply to another person, you can make whatever choice you want. Voting to take away other people's rights is despicable. And a lot of people voted for presidents that have appointed people to the Supreme Court and to state Supreme Courts that are slowly or rapidly, depending what part of the U.S. you're in, rapidly eroding what the UN would call human right violations. They're eroding human rights. Because if men had to put up with what women do in order to have a voice in our reproduction, men wouldn't put up with it. If you told men that you can't have surgeries that impact your ability to have kids, you can't take pills that keep away STIs. If you tell men that you can't have condoms because that affects the ability to bring children in the world, they wouldn't put up with it. If men had to put up with what women have to put up with, or don't have access to, or are kept from having a voice, men would not put up with it. The problem is, every civilization has tried to control women's bodies. Women used to be the property of their husbands or their fathers. That's why men created virginity, so they could sell women for higher capital. Men have been obsessed and afraid of female sexuality, autonomy, and agency from whenever we got here. And regarding your beliefs, that can be anywhere from 6,000 years to 600 million. Doesn't really matter. Women in most places in the world are lucky to choose the person they marry, let alone how often someone comes out of it. And not all churches ignore how women are affected due to abortion bans. What they don't tell you before they overturned Roe versus Wade is that history has proven, you do a simple Google search, which group of people are usually impacted the most by abortion bans? 9 out of 10 times, it's going to say women of color. Poor women of color. Anyone who is not of the working middle class. Anyone who makes less than what is considered middle class. And that's different in all 50 states. If you're not making a specific amount of money or more, you will be most affected by abortion bans. Conservatives have already proven, and you can do a Google search, how many women have died since Roe versus Wade was overturned. I'm not sure 100%, but I think it was in Georgia, where a woman was kept on a life-saving device because she was pregnant. Now, that would be perfectly moral and civilly legal if she had expressed desire to do that if something were to happen to her, whether it was a written consent form or a verbal consent, or if the people who knew her would have known she wanted that for her child, that would be perfectly fine. But her family said that she was the kind of person that wouldn't want to be kept alive for up to a year on artificial tubes. The state overrode what the parents wanted, which is, in my opinion, as a medical professional, a breach of trust between patient and doctor. It goes against everything medical things stand for. Do no harm. Do what's best for the patient. A woman lost control of her own body, legally and medically, for months. She finally died. And I think her baby died too. A lot of women have died since Roe versus Wade was overturned. Everyone has the right to choose. But in this country, the majority of people don't think so. And if it's not the majority, it's the people who are the majority when they vote. The people in the Supreme Court, whether it's the state Supreme Court or the federal Supreme Court, people voted the presidents or governors into their office to ultimately appoint these people. We are responsible, whether we didn't vote or whether we voted for it. We're all responsible for these people, these judges, these executive people who struck down women having equality. Everyone has the right to make their own choices. The problem is the ultra-religious extremist groups don't believe women are equal with men. They don't see them as fully human. They